Who is Lady Jessica? Lady Jessica Atreides is one of the most significant characters in Frank Herbert's Dune science fiction saga. As the unwed consort of Duke Leto Atreides and the mother of Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Jessica is also a highly trained member of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood. She later rises to the respected position of Reverend Mother among the Fremen people of the desert planet Arrakis. Guided by both her maternal instincts and her rigorous Bene Gesserit training, she makes decisions that alter the fate of the galaxy, leaving an indelible mark on the Dune universe. Youth, Lineage, and Bene Gesserit training. Jessica's story is intertwined with a secret plan that began even before her birth. The Bene Gesserit sisterhood had been conducting a centuries-long genetic breeding program, and Jessica was one of its carefully engineered outcomes. In accordance with standard protocol, the identities of her parents were concealed. Her father was none other than Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, one of the most ruthless men in the galaxy, while her mother was a Bene Gesserit priestess. Taken under the protection of the Bene Gesserit from the moment she was born, Jessica was raised and trained according to the Order's goals. The sisterhood's plan was to pair Jessica with the heir of House Atreides, Duke Leto, and have her bear a daughter. That daughter would then be bred with Rewrote of House Harkonnen, ultimately producing the Kwisatz Haderach, an extraordinary being with the to bridge space, time, and ancestral memory. This union was intended to end the long-standing feud between the Atreides and Harkonnen bloodlines and create a superhuman capable of shaping the future. For this grand purpose, Jessica underwent the most rigorous Bene Gesserit training. From childhood onward, at the Bene Gesserit school on the planet Wallach 9, she learned to gain complete control over her body and mind, endure pain, observe even the smallest details, and when necessary, use the voice to influence others. The sisterhood specially trained Jessica for the role of motherhood through an intensive 14-year program, shaping her into both a biologically ideal mother and a sharp, perceptive mind capable of guiding those around her. Young Jessica grew up with the awareness that one day she would be the mother of a child destined to shape the future of the galaxy. Relationship with Duke Leto Atreides. At first, the Bene Gesserit's plan seemed to be progressing smoothly. Around 10,175 AG, according to the imperial calendar, young Jessica was presented to Duke Leto Atreides, ruler of the planet Caladan, as his bound concubine. This title was an official status that allowed the Duke to marry someone else for political reasons if necessary. However, despite not being married, Leto and Jessica soon formed a genuine, deep bond of love. Defying the strict orders of the Bene Gesserit, Jessica chose to give the man she loved not a daughter, but a son. The long-desired heir Duke Leto had yearned for was born on Caladan and was named Paul Atreides. Out of love and respect, Leto never treated Jessica as a mere concubine. He ensured she was honored by society as Lady Jessica, and although they never married, he regarded her as his true life partner. Jessica, in turn, remained devoted to her Duke, with many saying that she never stopped loving Leto until the end of her days. The years spent on Caladan were peaceful for House Atreides. During this period, Jessica enjoyed the experience of motherhood, while also beginning to raise her son with her own values. Paul Atreides grew up learning both his father's aristocratic leadership qualities and his mother's Bene Gesserit discipline. From a young age, Jessica began teaching Paul Bene Gesserit techniques, such as body control, mental conditioning, and the use of the voice. Under his mother's guidance, young Paul underwent rigorous training and was even resilient enough to face one of the Bene Gesserit's most feared tests, the Gom Jabbar. In this trial, administered by Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Moyam, Paul endured the agony of the pain box while Jessica watched anxiously, and he emerged successful. Jessica's parenting, equal parts tender and strict, played a crucial role in preparing Paul for the immense challenges he would one day face. Betrayal, exile, and life among the Fremen. Years later, an unexpected political move tore House Atreides from their peaceful life on Caladan and thrust them into the Empire's harshest domain. Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV granted Duke Leto control of the desert planet Arrakis, long under Harkonnen rule. Though presented as an honor, the appointment was in truth part of a trap designed to destroy House Atreides. In 10,191 AG, Leto, Jessica, and 15-year-old Paul left the ocean world of Caladan and relocated to Arrakis, also known as Dune. Their worst fears soon came to pass. Baron Harkonnen launched a deadly assault on the Atreides, supported by the Emperor's elite Sardaukar forces. During the attack, Duke Leto was killed. Jessica and Paul were captured by Harkonnen agents and taken into the desert to be abandoned and left to die. The Baron had Jessica drugged and gagged to neutralize her, and Paul was also restrained. The two were released deep within the desert with no expectation of survival. However, thanks to contraband supplies and survival tools secretly left by Dr. Yue, a Harkonnen-planted traitor who acted out of remorse, Jessica and Paul managed to escape into the sands. Mother and son endured scorching heat, lethal sandstorms, and the colossal sandworms of the deep desert. During this ordeal, Jessica faced not only the grief of Leto's death, but also a shocking truth. She learned that her biological father was Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. The leader of her family's greatest enemy was her own father, a secret of Bene Gesserit, breeding history, that shook her to the core. Eventually, Jessica and Paul encountered a band of Fremen, the desert people of Arrakis. Hardened by generations of survival in the dunes, the Fremen were fierce, proud, and deeply independent. Although wary of outsiders at first, they soon came to respect the newcomers. Paul earned their admiration by defeating one of the Fremen, Jamis, in a ritual duel, while Jessica gained the trust of their leader Stilgar through her Bene Gesserit skills and composed strength. Even more importantly, the Missionaria Protectiva, the Bene Gesserit's long-running religious engineering program, had seeded myths among the Fremen centuries earlier. These legends spoke of a prophesied messiah from the outer world and a guiding mother figure. Jessica recognized the opportunity and used these beliefs strategically. She helped position Paul as the awaited savior, the Lisan al-Gaib, voice heard from the outer world, and herself as his mother and spiritual guide. The Fremen soon began to see Paul Muad'Dib as the messianic figure of their prophecies and regarded Jessica, though not yet formally, almost as a Reverend Mother. Life in the desert revealed Jessica's resilience and strength. She was no longer only a mother, she had become a protector of a new people and a pivotal force in the destiny of Arrakis. Becoming a Reverend Mother and the birth of Aliyah. After Jessica and Paul were accepted into the Fremen community at Sietch Tabor, a pivotal moment arose. The Sietch's aging Reverend Mother, Ramallo, was nearing death, and a successor was required. Within Fremen culture, the spiritual roles of Sayadina, acolyte priestess, and Reverend Mother were sacred. Yet Jessica, as an outsider trained by the Bene Gesserit, appeared uniquely suited for the position. Stilgar and the Fremen believed her arrival fulfilled ancient prophecies and encouraged her to undertake the rite. Attaining this title was no simple task. Jessica had to drink the deadly poison known as the Water of Life and chemically transform it within her own body to render it harmless. The Water of Life was a concentrated spice essence produced from drowned sandworms of Arrakis, and only a Reverend Mother, through immense mental and physical discipline, could survive the spice agony, the trance in which the poison was neutralized. Despite the great risk, Jessica chose to perform the ritual. Entering a deep, altered state, she both purified the poison and absorbed the accumulated memories and wisdom of Reverend Mother Ramallo. Jessica survived the ordeal and was declared the new Reverend Mother of the Fremen. She now held access to the other memory, becoming the spiritual leader of the tribe. What Jessica could not avoid, however, was the unintended consequence of undertaking the ritual while pregnant. She was carrying a child, and the awakening of consciousness triggered by the spice agony affected the unborn baby as well. Her daughter Aliyah Atreides was preborn, imbued with full ancestral memories and awareness before birth. In other words, Alia entered the world with the mind, knowledge, and consciousness of an adult Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother. Within the Bene Gesserit order, such children were labeled abominations, as they faced a grave spiritual danger. Their undeveloped personalities risked being overtaken by the ego selves of their ancestors, trapped within the other memory. Jessica had not sought this outcome, but to survive and gain the Fremen's allegiance, she had no alternative. Alia was born a singular and extraordinary child, an awakening that would one day earn her the title Saint Alia of the Knife, while also foreshadowing the tragedy of her life. Jessica, now transformed by the ritual, carried both the serenity and the burden of her duty. She had achieved the Fremen's highest spiritual status, preparing the path for her son Muad'Dib's rise. Her body and mind had been altered by the spice. Her eyes had turned the deep, unbroken melange blue, the Fremen's revered blue-in-blue sign of spice saturation. This transformation granted Jessica immense power, but it also placed upon her shoulders the spiritual responsibility of an entire people. The rise of Paul Muad'Dib and the founding of the Empire. Under the guidance of his mother Jessica, Paul quickly rose to a position of leadership among the Fremen, taking the name Muad'Dib. With Jessica's counsel and the military strength of the Fremen, Paul trained and mobilized a massive desert army hidden within Arrakis. Their objective became clear: avenge House Atreides and overthrow the corrupt imperial order. Throughout this campaign, Jessica remained Paul's greatest supporter and advisor. Eventually, Paul Muad'Dib and the Fremen forces defeated both the Harkonnen and the Imperial Corrino armies, seizing full control of Arrakis. Emperor Shaddam IV was forced to abdicate, and Paul assumed the title of Padishah Emperor, becoming the new ruler of the galaxy. For the sake of political stability, the young emperor entered a formal marriage with Princess Irulan Corrino, the former emperor's daughter. Yet this union was purely strategic. Paul's true love and life partner was Chani, a Fremen woman. Jessica, ever pragmatic, viewed Irulan as the official wife in title only, while Chani was the true daughter-in-law. In one historically memorable scene, Jessica comforted a heartbroken Chani with these words, "Do you see that proud princess? She will have the name of wife, yet never know a moment of her husband's love. But we, Chani, we may be called concubines, yet history will call us wives." This statement reflects Jessica's core values. She cared little for social rank or titles, valuing authentic bonds above formal status. Indeed, Jessica herself had carried the title of concubine for years, yet lived and was remembered as Duke Leto's true wife. After Paul ascended to the throne and claimed the Golden Lion throne, Jessica chose not to remain at the center of power. While she had witnessed the rise of her son's empire, she became increasingly disturbed by the growing religious fanaticism and political intrigue that surrounded Paul and Alia, who were now revered almost as divine beings. Jessica wanted distance from this fervent atmosphere. She returned to Caladan, the world where she had once lived peacefully with Leto. During this period, she reconnected with the Bene Gesserit sisterhood and, according to some accounts, developed a close bond with longtime family ally Gurney Halleck. In any case, Jessica maintained her influence from a distance, preserving her standing within the Bene Gesserit while offering counsel to her son as needed. Years of exile, return, and final days. During Paul's reign as emperor, particularly throughout the events of Dune Messiah, Jessica remained distant from political affairs, living in seclusion on Caladan. Yet Paul's rule was far from peaceful. Roughly 12 years after ascending the throne, conspiracies and tragic events led Paul Atreides to become blind. Following Fremen tradition, he walked into the desert and disappeared. Declared dead, he left the empire in the hands of his sister, Alia Atreides, who assumed the role of regent. When Jessica learned of her son's fate, she was devastated and deeply concerned for the future of the empire. Several years passed. The Bene Gesserit called upon Jessica, asking for her assistance regarding the next generation of House Atreides. Paul's twin children with Chani, Leto II Atreides and Ganima Atreides were growing up, and the sisterhood sought to regain influence over these pre-born heirs. Jessica decided to return to Arrakis after many years, not only to fulfill this duty, but also to reunite with the grandchildren she had never met. Upon her return, Jessica found Arrakis in a state more troubled than she could have imagined. As regent, her daughter Alia had become increasingly tyrannical and paranoid. She declared herself a sacred and infallible leader, suppressed dissent, banned historical critique, and even executed historians who recorded the truth. Determined to protect Leto II and Ganima, Jessica quickly sensed a horrifying truth. Alia's mind had been overtaken by the vengeful consciousness of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, her maternal grandfather. Alia, born preborn, had always carried the risk of possession by ancestral personalities. Over time, the darkest of them, the Baron, took control, twisting Alia into a puppet for his malice. The realization that the Harkonnen bloodline, her own, was destroying the Atreides empire through her daughter horrified Jessica. Conflict soon became inevitable. Influenced by the Baron's voice, Alia plotted her mother's assassination. A failed attempt was made on Jessica's life, but she narrowly escaped. In danger, she sought refuge among the Fremen once more, returning to Sietch Tabr under Stilgar's protection. Meanwhile, Alia ordered her husband, Duncan Idaho, to eliminate Jessica. However, Duncan, recognizing how far Alia had fallen, refused to harm the woman he loved as a mother, and instead helped Jessica escape Arrakis. Behind this escape was the guidance of a mysterious blind preacher known as the Preacher, believed by many to be Paul himself. Through Duncan, he instructed Jessica to travel to Seleucia Secundus to train an individual who awaited her there. Jessica reached Seleucia Secundus, where the exiled former Emperor Shaddam had once ruled. There she found her pupil, Prince Farad'n Corrino, Shaddam's grandson. Understanding her task, Jessica began training Farad'n in Bene Gesserit methods, discipline, bodily control, and the subtle arts of politics and persuasion. In doing so, she unwittingly shaped a future stabilizing force for the Empire. By the end of Children of Dune, Farad'n would form a political marriage pact with Ganima, though as a concubinus, not her true husband, and serve as scribe and advisor to the future Emperor Leto II, mirroring in a poetic twist the role Jessica herself once played. Back on Arrakis, the civil conflict reached its climax. Jessica's grandson, Leto II, now a young man with extraordinary awareness and destiny, seized control. Alia, fully dominated by the Baron's presence, regained a moment of clarity and, overwhelmed by guilt, threw herself from a window, ending her life. The preacher, Paul Atreides, accepted his son's ascendance to power and met his own end in peace. Jessica witnessed the tragic deaths of both her children, an unbearable grief marking the close of an era. After these storms, Jessica chose a life of quiet peace once more. She returned to Caladan, the land she loved, and spent her final years in tranquility. According to the genealogical records in the appendices of Dune, Lady Jessica lived to the age of 102 and passed away in the year 10,256 AG. Thus ended the life of Lady Jessica, once the Bene Gesserit's defiant daughter, the mother of a dynasty and the wise mother of the desert. Legacy and importance. The legacy of Lady Jessica continued to shape the Dune universe for thousands of years. Her decision to follow her heart, rather than the Bene Gesserit's long-crafted plan, fundamentally altered the balance of power across the galaxy. The Bene Gesserit never forgave Jessica for disobeying orders by bearing a son, and her act was remembered throughout history with stern caution. Within the sisterhood, this betrayal became known as Jessica's crime, a lesson on how a Bene Gesserit allowing personal emotion to outweigh duty could lead to catastrophic, uncontrollable consequences. Indeed, the son Jessica bore out of love, Paul, became a Kwisatz Haderach beyond the sisterhood's control and steered the Empire down an unpredictable path. For generations, the sisterhood retold Jessica's story as a warning about the necessity of discipline for the sake of humanity's survival. Yet Jessica's legacy was not defined by failure or caution alone. It was also a source of inspiration. Her courage in the desert, the fierce determination shaped by maternal instinct, and the sacrifices she made to protect those she loved became legendary. Among the Fremen, she was remembered with deep respect as the mother of Muad'Dib and as the first Fremen Reverend Mother, a spiritual guide who helped reshape their destiny. Her grandchildren, Leto II and Ghanima, inherited both her genetic and spiritual legacy. Leto II, in particular, drew upon his grandmother's wisdom and influence, reflecting her impact through his rule and his profound transformation of human civilization. Ultimately, Lady Jessica Atreides remains one of the most complex and influential figures of the Dune saga. She was a mother, a lover, a rebel, and a spiritual leader, someone whose single act of love changed the course of an empire and redirected the fate of humanity. A powerful woman who stood tall against the shifting sands of destiny, Jessica's story remains etched in the minds of readers and viewers alike, immortalized as a symbol of sacrifice, love, and the profound tension between fate and choice in science fiction literature.